Welcome back to the Movie Man. Today I will show you a 2020 sports drama film, The Way Back. Spoilers ahead, watch out, and take care. At the beginning of the movie, a man named Jack Cunningham. When he was a teenager, Jack attended Bishop Hayes High. He was a basketball athlete who was full of talent and an ace on his team. He was even chosen as the best player in the inter-school championship because of his achievement. Jack got an athletic scholarship for the basketball program at the University of Kansas, but unfortunately, he decided not to take the scholarship as an act of rebellion against his father for not loving him. When he grew up, he married a woman named Angela. But because his only child died of cancer, Jack became addicted to alcohol and slowly brought his marriage to an end. A year after the divorce, Jack worked as a construction worker and lived alone. He became an alcoholic and his life was a complete mess. He was inseparable from alcohol to the point where he would bring it everywhere, even when he was taking a shower. On one occasion, on Thanksgiving Day, Jack visited his family for a feast. After the feast, Jack's sister, Betty, advised him to stop his bad habit of drinking alcohol, but no matter what his sister told him, he didn't care at all. He didn't listen at all and continued his drinking habit. The next day, Jack received a voicemail on his phone. It was a message from a man named Father Edward Devine, one of the officials of Bishop Hayes High, his alma mater, saying that he wanted to meet Jack. When he got there, Father Devine immediately offered him a position as a coach for the school's basketball team because the last coach had resigned from his position. Moreover, when that happened, he was the first person that came to Father Devine's mind that would be able to replace the last coach. Seeing Jack, who seemed unable to answer yet, Father Devine decided to give him time to think about it again. When he got home, Jack thought that it would be best to turn down the offer. Besides, he was currently living the dreary days and would not be able to do the job. Even more, Bishop Hayes High's basketball team performance was awful at that time. Jack would have a hard time trying to turn them into good players. While drinking, Jack tried to think of a nice refusal to say to Father Devine, but until the stock of beer in his fridge ran out, he still couldn't find the right word to say to refuse the offer. In the end, he decided to give it a go. In the morning, he came to the training ground. Jack met an assistant coach named Dan who explained that Bishop Hayes High's basketball team had never entered the playoff round since Jack's graduation about 20 years ago. It was true that the basketball team once had their high grounds and won the championship, but it was long ago when Jack was still there. Since then, Jack was the only decent player the team ever mentioned as their best player. Dan explained that his team currently consisted only of 10 players and the interest of all students to join the basketball team had decreased year after year. Despite being on the team as a player, nobody had the mentality of an athlete. They talked too much and were hard to handle. Even some of them didn't show any respect to Jack. Dan then took Jack to his office. Since that day, Jack finally started his new job as Bishop Hayes High's basketball coach. When it was time for him to face his first match against another school, Jack was so nervous because it was his first time coaching a team. Short story, the results were as expected. Bishop Hayes High's team lost badly to the opposing team. Many matches had passed but to no avail. The team never won the match, not even a single time. One night, Jack got a message from his ex-wife Angela. She invited Jack to meet at lunchtime after more than a year apart. They then met and discussed their respective lives. Angela was worried about Jack's life because he lived in sorrow and couldn't move on, unlike her, who had already moved on, got a new partner, and had a new life. Jack was surprised to find the fact that his wife had found someone to replace him, because deep down, Jack still wished for his wife to forgive him. Since that meeting with Angela, Jack's addiction to alcohol has worsened. One day, their basketball team was going to compete with Memorial High School's basketball team, which was on their best performance so far at that time. Jack overheard the opponent's team say that they were about to face a loser and mocked their team. At the venue, Jack, who was a former great player, was easily recognized by the opposing coach, including his bad drinking habit. Jack realized that his team was a loser just by looking at them, who despite doing some warm-ups like the opposing team, They instead didn't care at all. They danced and laughed and made jokes. None of them had the mentality of an athlete. Jack immediately told them to stop joking around. The team was already behind the points. What they needed was nothing more but a victory, not another embarrassment. The match finally started. As expected, the Memorial High School's basketball team was on fire and outperformed Jack's team without any difficulty. They were far enough behind in points. The team hardly played as a team would play. Chemistry during the match was off and the players lacked individual skills. When it was time's up, Jack immediately gave a loud instruction. One of the players named Marcus took his instruction for granted. Seeing how disrespectful he was to him, Jack decided to substitute him with another player, Freeze. Then, he forces his players to try harder no matter how badly the game goes on. Even after losing every single match, at least they had to try and focus. Thanks to Jack's loud instruction just now, it made the players excited to play. One of the players named Freeze even committed such harsh fouls that triggered the opposing team. Despite losing the match with a great score difference, at least Jack was able to gain momentum for his team. On their way back, Father Whelan approached Jack. He said that Bishop Hayes High School has a code of ethics, one of which is the use of polite language. What was done on the field earlier was too impolite, so it would have a bad impact on the children, said Pastor Whelan. The mission of the school was not to win any match but to develop a faithful personality. When Jack was about to go home, Dan asked Jack about an empty beer can in the coach's office. Dan reminded him not to drink in the coach's office anymore. Jack initially planned to drink that night, but he thought that he needed to stop that bad drinking habit of his and chose to just go home. The next day, Jack with all the players gathered to discuss the team's strategy. Just like usual, Marcus showed disrespect towards Jack. He even came late and didn't seem to feel guilty about it. He didn't apologize but rather asked Jack to understand his lateness. That disrespectful behavior of Marcus changed Jack's mind and removed Marcus from his team. He did that so that Marcus could respect the coach and be professional. That evening, they would face Summit High School's basketball team. Both teams played very well and for the first time, Bishop High's team could play competitively. Jack coached from the side of the court while shouting at the players. When the clock showed 15 seconds left, Bishop High was 1 point behind. During the timeout, Jack, who already analyzed the opposing team's strategy, instructed his players so that they could score 3 points in the last seconds. With that strategy, they finally won the match. On their way home, Jack gave Brandon Dorrit, one of Bishop's players, a car ride. Jack said that Brandon was the best player on his team, but was confused because he didn't seem to be confident about that. Brandon seemed to be able to analyze his friend's play style, but he didn't dare to rebuke them because he didn't feel like it was his job. Jack then planned to make Brandon the captain of the team to build his confidence and make him worthy. He also planned a harder training special only for him. Like and subscribe may look simple for you, but for us, it's precious. Please like, subscribe, and press the bell icon for the latest notifications. Thank you for being so supportive. He wanted to build Brandon's captain mentality to be able to lead his team, which annoyed Brandon so much that he screamed during the training session, but for Jack, it was worth it. One afternoon, Marcus came to Jack's house to ask his permission to return to the team, but Jack didn't allow him. Jack instead suggested some extracurricular activities. Marcus, who was desperate to return to the team, cried and begged Jack to recruit him back. He promised to be respectful, serious, and work harder for the team. Jack finally agreed to put him back on the team and told him to come to the training session that afternoon. With his return to the team, he would need time to regain his teammates' respect for him and to show them that he was worthy enough to play with them. At that same moment, Jack said that he officially appointed Brandon to become the team's captain. That day became a good momentum for Bishop Hayes' basketball team. With strict and hard training and evaluation of each game, Jack managed to change the situation significantly. A team that never won a single match became a team that slowly grew stronger. The team's performance increased and the team started winning game after game. Not only on the field, but the chemistry between Jack and his players was also good outside of the field. The team started showing respect toward Jack. One day, Jack and Angela attended an invitation from their old friends whose children had birthdays. They were old friends who were also fellow parents whose children had cancer. Attending the event made Jack remember his son, Michael. After the event, Jack and Angela went to their son's grave who died 3 years ago. Long story short, the next day, Bishop Hayes' basketball team faced the match against Trinity High School. The match was an important match that would determine whether they would pass to the playoffs or not, because if they didn't win the match, they had to face Memorial High School, which of course would be a lot harder to manage. The course of the match was so tough that they had to score back-to-back with the opponent. It was only natural that the players were nervous because that was their first time facing a decisive match. In the middle of the game, the referee gave a foul on a Bishop Hayes team. The foul triggered Jack's anger since it was called in the last seconds of the game. His anger got out of control and finally, Jack was sent off the field. Bishop Hayes had to narrowly lose that night. On the way home, Jack apologized to Brandon for getting too carried away in the match earlier. In the car, Brandon asked Jack's reason to turn down his opportunity to go for a scholarship. Jack then revealed his past where his father showed conditional love towards him. His father cared nothing about him but his achievements in basketball. It was only when he excelled in basketball that his father would love him. Jack realized that what his father loved was not him but his abilities, and that was why he refused a scholarship to get revenge on his father. Jack made a lot of bad decisions in his youth, so he didn't want Brandon to do the same. One day, Jack went to see Brandon's father at work. Jack said to him that Brandon had a chance to get a full scholarship because someone offered Brandon to take part in recruitment. Jack then invited him to go to watch his son's game, but he refused his invitation, saying that he had to take care of 2 other children at home. Sadly, Brandon's father said that he was against his son's decision to put basketball over anything and make it his main job. He also said that it wouldn't work because he once received the same offer too. The decisive match to qualify for the playoff round finally began. That evening, they hosted the match against Memorial High School, which had previously beaten them. The pressure was big and the team was nervous about the match. Jack encouraged his team that the opposing team was indeed more talented and maybe also had a good coach, but that night, they had changed and deserved to win the match. The match started just like the previous match against Memorial High School. Bishop immediately left behind a huge gap. Nervous was the main reason for their bad performance. But after the timeout, Jack gave another strategy and different instructions. After that, they started to catch up. They even actively defended and made it difficult for Memorial to score. Bishop consistently played aggressively, and even the opposing coach, who initially underestimated them, began to panic seeing how good they played. In the remaining 12 seconds, Jack asked for a timeout. He consulted Dan about what strategy should they play. At first, Jack explained their main strategy for them to play to get more points, but in the end, he called Brandon and told him to forget about the strategy earlier. He entrusted Brandon to make the last shot. Unexpectedly, Brandon carried out that so well that they managed to beat Memorial by a narrow score and qualify for the playoffs after years of being the losing team. The next day, Jack got a call from his ex-wife, saying that their friend's child was hospitalized. When they entered the hospital, it turned out that the child of their friends also experienced the same sickness as their child, Michael. Seeing that brought back Jack's long-gone scar. He was so devastated and angry with himself for what happened to Michael. The shock was so great it brought back his drinking habit even after a long break. He was drunk to the point that he woke up late, even though the team had to prepare for their practice for a playoff match the next day. Dan, who knew that Jack had returned to his bad habit, then decided to make a move about it. After the practice session was over, Dan called Father Devine to meet with Jack. Father Devine then told Jack to step down from his coaching position because he brought alcohol to the training ground. He even was not sober when he attended that morning training session. Jack initially apologized for what he had done since it was a rough day for him yesterday. He told them to focus on the playoff matches, but unfortunately, Father Devine's decision was unanimous. He didn't want Jack to be around the players anymore. Jack was disappointed because he was the one who brought the team this far, but no matter how disappointed he was, He was the one who caused the problem for himself. Jack was forced to leave the school and return to his old habit again. At the bar, he was treated by his old friend, a woman named Diana. Jack and Diana then went together and planned to go to her house, but unfortunately, Jack, who was drunk driving, crashed into a boat belonging to Diana's neighbor and had to run away, while Diana herself ran back to her house. After running away and securing his car, Jack returned to Diana's house, but since he was drunk, he accidentally entered the wrong house, which made him have to deal with the angry owner of the house. Hearing that the house owner called the police, Jack tried to run away, and unluckily, fell and suffered serious injuries. The next morning, Jack woke up. He was confused to find himself lying on the hospital bed. His sister, Betty, was there waiting for him to wake up. She didn't want the incident to keep repeating, so she tried to help Jack by sending him to a rehabilitation center for therapy to cure his drinking habit. So far, Jack had carried the burden alone and isolated himself from his family since the death of his son, Michael. Through rehabilitation, Jack received enlightenment to improve his future. He also tried to forgive the past and apologize to Angela for not being a good husband and father at that time. He regretted everything and wanted to be a better person. Jack was back with his family, who kept supporting him to get better. One day, Jack called Dan regarding his current condition. He hoped to be accepted back to coach Bishop after leaving the rehabilitation center. On the other hand, the team was about to start their first playoff match. Things had changed for the better. Even though Jack was not there, the lessons Jack gave them remained and became a passion for all of them. Long story short, in the rehabilitation center, Jack kept hearing the news that Bishop had become a strong team with Brandon as a shining player. After finishing his rehabilitation, Jack was then accepted back into coaching the team. That was all of the video. I hope you enjoyed it. Thanks for watching.